watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
You sick fucks. You've seen one too many.
I said, don't you blame the movies! Movies don't create psychos! Movies make psychos more creative!
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm Rowan.
It's Exilia.
Hi, this is Mike.
And welcome to episode, I don't even know, like 6?
5 maybe? I don't know, 6?
I don't know. We have all these bonus episodes now, and...
We're so organized, you guys.
I know,
like, it's
but...
just this fucking well-oiled machine. It's
6.
Just...
It's...
a ship.
It is episode 6. Whoever thought we would make it this far? We didn't think we were going to make it to 5, and now we made it to 6. That's amazing. Before we start, we want to do a quick little plug to let everyone know on Spotify. We now have a Spotify playlist we've created. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, Exilia?
I guess. So we always talk about the music, and I think that's something that comes up in most of the reviews we do is the music. So I just thought we would start a Spotify playlist, and then everybody can listen to the music with us.
Yes, tracks we talk about, or tracks that we love from other movies, or, you know, our favorite horror-ish songs. They don't necessarily have to be for movies, but...
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be a mishmash, yeah. It's a collaborative... melange.
And I was gonna say, to answer the question that's on everyone's mind, yes, Cry Little Sister is on it.
Obviously.
The playlist is just the Lost Boys soundtrack ad nauseum for 20 hours.
We just re-add it, so it's an endless loop.
Oh, we found all the extended versions of every song that are like 9 minutes long. So the soundtrack is actually longer than the movie itself.
So what's everyone been up to? What have you guys been watching on TV? Movies that aren't horror? I don't know. What's going on in life?
Mike, you go first, because I live with Rowan, and he probably knows what I'm watching.
Well, I just finished watching Grace and Frankie, the new season, so I'm now waiting for season 6, which apparently doesn't come out till 2020, so RIP that. Game of Thrones, of course. That's really the only thing that I'm caught up on. Or both of those. And I'm rewatching Degrassi: The Next Generation from season 1, so that's
nice.
This is the type of person that I am. I am watching, it now turns out 18-year-old teen TV. That's
okay. I have a really guilty pleasure spot for Big Brother Canada. So I'm watching Big Brother Canada, although I'm like a bit behind. There is like 2 Newfoundlanders on there that I honestly I didn't overly like them as people on Big Brother, but they're from Newfoundland, so I gotta, you know how it is.
Yeah, I don't buy that. That's bullshit.
What? What do you mean?
I mean, it's nice to, support.
Yeah, exactly. So
but,
I didn't necessarily.
Honestly, it's a reality show. If they're not likable or you don't hate them, love them, then what's the point?
Yeah, I just felt like I had to I had to really support Newfoundland, and it was nice. I miss Newfoundland, obviously. So,
God love you.
It was nice to they had hard accents too, especially the guy. So, and we watched a few episodes of Our Planet on Netflix, which was both amazing and also completely heartbreaking because it was we've only seen 3 or 4 episodes.
Yeah, I think.
And it's essentially like a nature documentary. But then it has a climate change aspect. So it's here are these beautiful creatures and this beautiful rainforest and habitat and blah, blah, blah. But guess what? You're fucking it up. Thanks to climate change. So, that's pretty depressing. And, then we recently just binge watched, season 2 of Sabrina. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which was
Oh,
awesome.
I still haven't watched it. I can't wait. I love Karen and Shipka. I love
I
everybody in
know.
that show.
Yeah, it was. I liked it a lot better than I liked the first season. I actually really, really liked this season. So,
Yeah, I've been watching everything Zillie's been watching.
besides Big Brother,
And then, I watch stuff usually when she falls asleep. No, it's not porn.
It's just stuff.
I'm in season 2 right now of BoJack Horseman, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Sadly, I watched episode 1 of Frank and Morty, and
You mean Rick and Morty?
Is it Rick and Morty? Yeah, Rick and Morty.
Frank and
Frank.
Morty.
Clearly impressed. You don't even know the fucking name of the show.
I don't think I like it. I don't know if I'm going to continue to try to give it a chance, but
I know people love that show, but I tried to watch an episode and I was just like,
Yeah, so...
I watched most of the first season, and I did thoroughly enjoy it. And I usually watched it while I was blitzed, which may or may not have something to do with my level of enjoyment of it. But it's also one of those shows that kind of after that, when it started gaining a lot of traction, like online, and it had like the really hardcore fanboys and stuff. It just really turned me off because everybody that loved it, like, was really obnoxious and thought they were smart because they like this fucking cartoon,
Yes,
and I'm like,
true.
no.
Also, like,
First of all, it's no Futurama, so fuck right off.
the character would like puke on his mouth. Something about that just like really repulses me.
Because it's repulsive.
Yeah, like, and I just
That's
don't even
probably what it is.
I don't even want to watch it just based on that. I know that's stupid, but I can't even look at it.
I'm just imagining people listening to this, like those goddamn uptight academic people.
Yeah, I'm sure like a lot of people that listen to this probably like that show. No offense.
It's just not our cup of
No,
tea.
listen, like I said, I watched it, and I will still continue to watch it. I just don't advertise that I watch it because I don't want to be construed as one of those people.
Yikes.
Well, I guess that's all we're watching. We're too busy watching horror movies. So let's get into our movie of this week, which is Candyman, 1992. And let's just get right into the trailer.
Have you ever heard of Candyman? If you look in the mirror, you say his name 5 times.
In cities everywhere,
Candyman?
they whisper his name.
Right. Candyman.
It's just a story,
Candyman?
Candyman.
just a ghost story.
Candyman.
An entire community starts attributing the daily horrors of their lives to a mythical figure.
The legend first appeared in 1890. He was attacked, mutilated, and burned to death. Poor Candyman.
Helen, a woman died in there. Leave it.
Everyone knows he isn't real.
That's modern oral folklore.
Everyone. Except Helen Lyle.
Bernadette. It ain't safe around here. I don't scare too easy. Wanna know about Ruthie Jean? They ain't never gonna catch him. Who? Candyman.
Who is that?
I came for you.
Do I know you?
Now, she is about to discover
Helen? Get out! Get out!
what's behind the mystery.
I'm sick.
What's behind the legend.
Listen, he's under the bed!
And most terrifying of all,
Come with me.
what's behind the mirror.
He's here.
Candyman, you don't have to believe. Just beware.
Well, that was a amazing trailer as always.
It was riveting.
Riveting.
Very, very visually spectacular.
So what was everyone's, I guess we always talk about what's everyone's like first experience with this, or have you seen it before?
Yep.
How has Candyman affected your life?
This is, did I talk about this in the introduction episode? I think I did, where it was Megan Hardiker's birthday party, and we rented the videos from Candyland Video. I'm pretty sure I already talked about this. I mean,
I think you did.
We filmed this episode twice, so I don't like that episode, so I'm not 100% sure, but that was my first experience with this movie. That was grade 5, and I've seen it a handful of times since. Mostly when I was a teenager, and maybe like once or twice in my early 20s, but yeah.
We're having another vacancy issue where Exilia tells me we've seen this together and I don't remember.
We actually had seen it on Halloween when I was 15 going on 16.
Okay.
You were 15 going on 16, sorry. But my kind of like trajectory with this movie was very similar, and I probably saw it, I don't know, it was probably not the exact same age. I feel like I was probably 13 or 14. And I would have had to have been, yes, because one of my old friends from my like tween and teen years, we used to babysit her 2 younger sisters a lot. Because her parents had like very active social lives, and we were obviously very responsible. So they'd just order us a pizza and rent us whatever movies we wanted, and this was one of them. So we had quite a few experiences after we watched this of scaring the shit out of her family with the Candyman myth. And and I proceeded to watch it dozens of times while I was a teenager, and then, a couple of times in my early 20s, and this is definitely the first time I've rewatched it in quite a long time, and let's just say it was like watching a whole new movie with the change in my world outlook from when I was like 14 years old to now.
Definitely.
Yeah, well, I guess like Exilia said, I've seen it, but I don't remember. So I guess to me watching it, because I didn't overly like remember any of the scenes, anything, so I kind of felt like I was watching it for the first time. I know I've seen the movie before, even when I was a lot younger and before I knew Exilia. I know I had seen it, but I just didn't remember it, so it was a good refresher of this. So where do we want to start? Are we gonna start linear, non-linear?
Yeah, might as well start at the beginning.
I mean, we'll start at the beginning and then see where
that leads us. Yes, exactly.
I mean, because you gotta talk about 2 things at the beginning of this movie. Well, 3 really, but 2 are more important than the third. The third is the beautiful aerial shots. Yes, they're all great, but obviously
the music,
that goddamn music,
yes,
and the font of the Candyman logo, just it's like
the whole score is just, I love it. It's so eerie and creepy, and just like, it's really fantastically done.
Yes, and it's like, like got that classical edge that's like Philip Glass, so that, kind of jars a little bit with the kind of grittier nature of the movie, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
It's definitely probably up there with It Follows on probably like some of my favorite soundtrack scores.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, that music is just like very memorable. That's what I remember of the movie. Like when I hear that, I feel like even if you've never seen this movie, if you were alive in the 90s and you heard that theme song, like you would
know what it was.
Yeah,
recognize it somewhat. I feel like everyone's heard it, and yeah, it's just such like an iconic theme song, especially, that I really enjoyed.
You know what? I feel like this is the second time in a row that we have done a movie where it has a like very Hitchcock like opening sequence. Because remember with Vacancy, it was like that kind of animated Saul Bass style, and it looked very like kind of 60s Hitchcockian. And I found that overhead shot where they were just like kind of panning across the city, to me also had that kind of like 60s Hitchcock thrillery feel.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just me. I just said it's bizarre that 2 in a row, like, that we kind of randomly chose.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Had that kind of cool, like, vintage opening vibe.
Okay, full disclosure, I've literally never seen an Alfred Hitchcock movie in my life.
Okay,
I know, I'm getting, like, kicked off of this
We
podcast.
now have to be divorced.
There's so many, like, cult movies, I guess, that I've just, like, never seen. Like,
but see, this is, like, what's so great about, like, life and enjoying art is that there's always going to be things that you haven't experienced that, you know,
I can.
Everybody wants you to experience, or that you, like, want to, and, you know, you get to have, like, a first time with everything. And it doesn't have to be, you don't want to, like, you know, kind of, like, dive in the deep end, like, right at the beginning. Like, then you've seen everything, and, like, the rest of your life it's either just rewatching things, which is obviously a pleasureful experience, or, you know, sifting through mountains of shit for, like, a gem. And it's like, you have all these gems ahead of you. It's a beautiful way to live your life.
Thank you. Well, I remember when I was a kid, I had seen, like, a clip from The Birds. And that was a movie I remember really wanting to see, but my parents never watched Alfred Hitchcock movies. First of all, my mom, like, doesn't watch movies. And second of all, my dad just watches, like, whatever is around. So, yeah. That's one I'd like to watch for sure. And Psycho, obviously. I mean, that's
Psycho,
like a classic. But
I'm sure we'll do that at some point. I can't see.
Oh yes, we're gonna have to have a theme to that though. It's gonna have to be like, you know, a viewing where we kind of like pick up a specific thread and maybe just like, because, you know, obviously everything about Hitchcock has been done to death, so it's kind of like fun if we'll, you know, come at it from a certain angle and kind of like see how everybody interprets it.
Yeah,
maybe
that's a good idea.
A special edition episode.
Maybe there's like someone eating an apple weird in it or something.
Yeah. Well,
word of warning.
This guy in my work, Austin, that I work with, he told me that he's like very big on trivia, and he told me that the first toilet or the first toilet flushing, I can't remember, ever to be recorded on video was from Psycho.
Psycho, yes, yeah, that is weird yet interesting trivia,
like
because,
thing.
you know, like, you know, bathrooms, obviously, anybody, even if you haven't seen the movie, you know through the, like, billions of pop culture, like, recyclings, you know the fucking shower scene. So it's, like, one of the most harrowing, you know, beautifully, artistically shot, like, pieces of cinema, not even just horror, like, in history. And, you know, it takes place in a bathroom, so there's all this, like, weird, like, bathroom lore to it. It's kind of interesting.
Well,
which maybe
we could do our whole episode
Let's
on
do
that.
the Psycho bathroom podcast.
I do want to say, with some of the first shots of our main character, Helen, and stuff, I mean, I'm personally not a smoker, but I'm sure smokers that watch this are just like, the good old days when I can just smoke absolutely everywhere.
Part of me wanted, as I was rewatching it, to, like, count how many times, like, how many shots there are of, like, one of them, like her or Bernadette or somebody, like, just casually sucking on a cigarette, because I was like, it's just so fucking rare now. Like, you literally never see it.
Especially, like...
And it was, you don't need, like, back in the day, you would not have even blinked at it. It's just like, oh yeah, they're smoking a cigarette in the middle of a, like, fancy restaurant. Like,
it's like
whatever.
In the restaurant, in the university,
Yeah.
like...
I remember when I was a kid and we went to Ponderosa, of all places.
Oh my god, yes. I love Ponderosa.
And this is the only time I ever went to Ponderosa. Okay, first of all, they gave us, so you, like, go in, they're like, how many people? And you're like, 5 people or whatever. They give you 5 plates, and that doesn't account for the fact that there's, like, several different types of food. So there's, like, salads, there's mains, there's desserts.
The salad bar,
so
we had to, Sunday bar.
Yeah, we had to eat everything off of this one plate, which I find gross. Like, I don't want my dessert and my supper on the same plate. But anyways, that's besides the point. But so the smoking section was right next to the salad bar. And the non-smoking section was, like, away from the food. So I just never really got how that was a good idea.
I mean, I'm sure like smoked lettuce is. Maybe that's what they were going for.
Lettuce here.
No, but think about it. If it was like a real Ponderosa, like, you know, there would be smoke coating and like making everything taste better anyway. Instead of hickory smoked, it's fucking cigarette smoked. Cigarette smoked Caesar salad. Exclusive to Ponderosa. Yours for just $1.99.
There's probably a reason Ponderosa like doesn't exist anymore.
It's probably the smoked Phil salad bar.
Probably.
No, it's because I would fucking clean out their Sunday goddamn bar. Every time. I'd be like, I'm not even eating any food. Like, just give me a plate full of fries, and I'm just gonna go up to that machine and just, like, fucking crank it.
Have you ever been to Ponderosa?
I don't think.
It truly holds a special place in my childhood heart.
First it was the apple, then it was Ponderosa.
No, if you don't check me right now, I'll talk about Ponderosa for another 15 minutes.
You're Ponderosa, man. All right, let's talk about the opening a little bit. So our main characters, Helen and Bernadette, correct?
Yes.
Bernadette. They are. At first, I thought for sure they had to be at least PhD students. No, because they said they're. Oh, is that what a grad? Okay.
Well, grad student is master's.
Grad
or
student,
PhD,
yeah.
But they're PhD students.
Okay. Because they said grad.
And by PhD students, she means like divorcees in their late 30s.
Yeah,
except you know,
I thought it was kind of funny, especially where Helen is in the like the classroom at the beginning, and I was like, wow, all of these students in here are like so much younger than her.
Except the ones that they're interviewing at the beginning, except for the blonde guy, well, like the original girl who's telling the story, that like that little mini cinematic, you know, with Claire and Billy or whatever their names were.
Oh yes.
I was like, this bitch is at least in her mid-30s. Like,
also Billy
when they were
was
like,
definitely not a teenager.
Oh no! But that was what's his face? Ted Raimi. That's Sam Raimi's brother. Yeah,
oh,
he's
really?
in like literally every movie ever made, but he always has a bit part in every Sam Raimi movie. And he probably was like late 40s when that movie was shot, honestly. But I think that was like kind of like a winky joke because he's in a lot of like horror movies and, you know, dark fantasy movies and stuff.
Interesting.
And I guess before we really get into it, do we want to talk about the cast first?
The only thing I want to say is Virginia Madsen every day.
See, I think Tony Todd's like a god. Whoa, wait, right.
Oh, he is. Tony God. How dare you?
What? How dare I? What do you mean? Sorry.
You called him Tony Todd instead of Tony God.
Oh, Tony God. We watched the special features, and Virginia Madsen looks so different now.
That's what happens when you have a lot of work.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, she.
Yeah, I couldn't
like
even
she did a lot
tell it
of
was
plastic
her.
surgery. But she was saying in the thing that they made her eat a lot because they wanted her to be more quote unquote round. But I didn't think she looked that round in the movie.
She was round maybe in comparison to that like
girl in the front,
Kate Moss girl, yeah, the student Stacy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right.
The less we say about Stacy, the better. Honestly, I have lots of thoughts on Stacy.
Well, I was gonna say, really, for the cast, all we really need to say is, like Helen and Candyman.
Helen's eyes, when they do like the close-ups of her eyes, are just like, I love those scenes. I think they're so beautiful, and I think.
Oh yeah, where they have that like beautiful like
the light
slant of light going across her eyes. It's very like 80s futuristic new wave pop music video.
Apparently.
Which is actually how he got his directorial start, by the way, anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In the special features, she said those scenes where her eyes are like that, they like hypnotize her, and that's why her eyes are so like doughy, I guess you would say.
Oh my god, yes, and like every time they do one of those scenes, I would write a note like, you know, she's dickmatized.
Dickmatized, oh my god.
But, you know, without actually getting any. Well, actually, that hook is very phallic, but, you know.
That's terrible. Alright, so we're introduced to Helen and Bernadette. They're graduate students, and we start off basically right into like the fable of Candyman. They're doing interviews,
or like the folklore of it all.
Of the folklore of Candyman. And I love this kind of like, I had made it a note. I really like how it almost, to me, when I was looking at the movie, it pretty much right away starts building this world, but also kind of building this social commentary, like, immediately. Like, they don't wait to get into the movie. And all I could really think about was actually, was like the second season of Atlanta. Because I was thinking about, like, how similar this whole Candyman was similar to, like, Donald Glover's, like, Florida Man thing. Where it was, like, all of these, like, terrible things that are happening to, like, the black community. And it's all attributed to Candyman.
Well, she attributes it to Candyman.
Yeah, but as we learn within the movie, like, this whole community, like, knows of Candyman, and is like, Candyman is, like, does these things.
Oh, yeah, I guess I see what
And so
you're
that's
saying.
why, it just made me think of that, was, like, Atlanta, and they had the whole storyline of, like, Florida Man.
Because, never mind, there might be someone from Florida listening. But in the news, you see Florida Man a lot. Like, I mean, it comes up, Florida Man does this, Florida Man does that. Anyway.
I think it's a projection of the fact that Florida is roundly, considered one of the most screwed up places in North America, where the most insane shit happens that you will never believe is true, but it is in fact true.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have no comment for that.
No comment.
I've been to Florida a couple times. This is a nice place, guys.
I was gonna say, so at the beginning of this movie, this did kind of give me hope for some people, because I always wondered at MUN, like, what are these kids gonna do after they get their folklore degree? And then this is it.
Rowan and Cecily hated on MUN folklore students so hard. Especially
But you know what's funny? They had a class that was literally exactly the class that he was teaching in this movie.
Also,
and that's part of the reason why I took it when I went to
I just was curious what you did with that.
I would be so pissed if I were her, because the fact that he, like, basically taught his students about how, about folklore and, like, how it's produced and not real, essentially. And
well, yeah, he gave them the, like, social structure behind urban legends.
Yeah, and
so then they could think critically about their own
and then those
stories.
Yeah, exactly. And, like, she's in the middle of interviewing these kids about these urban legends, and he totally created a bias, and I'd be fucking pissed if my husband did that, because he essentially, if this was a real study, would have wrecked the entire integrity.
He interfered with
he wrecked the integrity of the study.
With the populace.
Yeah.
Well, and okay, now
but that's what's so funny about it, though, in a way. Like, he, I guess, like, poisons the well, right, so to speak, and which she is still drawing from, and it's like, it sort of brings this, like, weird self-awareness to it, which does not get addressed in the movie, but I kind of wish it would. And, like, are they then actually performing for her? Like, that never gets addressed, like, she brings it up that you ruined my project, but, because they, like, are hitting all the beats, right, that he, like, talks about in his class.
I wonder...
But it seems totally legit, but it's like, are they performing? And I kind of, like... I just wish they had addressed it.
I guess because, like, we see the interviews and then we see the lecture, and I don't think we see any more interviews, so I guess it's not really... Has he been teaching this for multiple weeks? Who knows? I guess that's unanswered.
And let's get the intro part out of the way. That guy that was, like, trying to, like, hit on them, like, that guy was not all
what
that.
What guy?
Do you know who I'm talking about, Mike? He looked like he was, like, from a Bizarro World, Saved by the Bell or something. Like,
oh, yes, because I have a note here that says, blonde guy's hair is back in style. He had the
Bernadette's interviewing him at the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like a really blocky, like a jockey kind of guy, right? And like as he's leaving, he looks back.
He's got like a weird face or something. Like I was like, this guy looks like.
Well, he looks like a square, like physically a square. Like he's very like literal blocks.
Yeah,
like he's just like something out of like Minecraft.
He's a real blockhead.
Oh my god. I feel like we're being really judgmental in this episode.
Listen, we promised a casual conversation about these movies. This is what a casual conversation entails. This is like sitting in on us, if we were all in the same room right now.
Yeah, this is like us after at the end of a party when it's just like 3 or 4 of us left and we're just like talking about random shit.
Let's also get another thing out of the way that no one is fooled in this classroom that her husband is not putting it to these undergraduate girls.
Well, that girl, that scene specifically, like, it's so obvious that there's something happening between the two of them.
I mean, come on, that fucking completely obvious, like, lingering look she gives him. It's like, she didn't just, like, side-eye it like somebody would now. Because, they got more discretion these days. Yeah. She was just like very indiscreetly like,
and she almost just like didn't.
I'm literally going to exorcist my head around because I don't want to break eye contact in front of your wife.
And she like didn't want to leave. She just like lingers, and then she's like, "Oh well, see you later." Like so, it's so obvious.
And I mean Trevor. That's his name, right? Trevor?
Yeah, Trevor.
Yes, Trevor.
Trevor is like definitely a grade A sleazeball.
I also feel like he definitely puts his career ahead of hers.
Oh, 100%.
Which makes me mad, and which is why he probably didn't give a fuck about fucking up her study, too.
And I can't think of, what that actor, I should have looked it up, what the actor's name is, but he's in, like, so much stuff.
Oh, Xander Berkeley.
Yes, that's it.
He's in everything, yeah.
I was gonna say, like, anything in the 90s, he was, like, such a character actor in. He's great in this movie. I'm trying to think. I didn't really write chronologically what happened.
Well, we don't need to move through a chronology. Let's just riff. Let's riff. First of all, I love clackety keyboards, and this movie was chock-a-block full of them clackety keyboards. Oh my god, that, like, fucking satisfying. Like, I felt it in my bones when they were typing on those, like, telnet screens, and, the keys were, like, 1.5 inches tall, and, oh my god, I was just, like, wet.
They were just really getting stuff done.
They were. It's like, it's very satisfying. It's very much like, I've got 5 pages written. Like, this is a lot.
The thing, okay, Mike, you probably know what this is called. The thing she was looking up the articles on. I can't remember the name of it. The machine.
Oh, microfiche.
Yeah. I always find something about that really, like, satisfying aesthetically, and I just think it's really cool, but also...
Because it goes in every direction.
Yeah. And it just, like, but it also actually makes me really thankful that I don't have to use it doing research, and I can just use the internet.
You can just go, I want to go to page 50 of this newspaper instead of, like, and let me tell you, when I was a youngster, we had them in the library, and... it's you've got your display like monitor or whatever, and then underneath it you have, it's essentially like 2 glass plates that you put that microfiche in, and it's kind of like light and a magnifier or whatever, so it goes from being this like maybe 7 inches by 7 inches piece of film onto the screen. But when you're moving the glass around so that the magnifier is like essentially what you're seeing on the screen, like I said, it's like, well, not even 7 inches. I'd say it's probably like 5 or 6 by 5 or 6. So if you're moving around and there's like hundreds of pages on this, like, you have to like literally move millimeter by millimeter in order to go page by page. And if you make any kind of like error in judgment with moving your finger, you're going to like papers weeks from now. So like, I watch people researching on microfiche in movies, and I'm like, man, that requires some, like, hand-eye coordination. Yeah, it is precision finger movements right there. But also, I feel like it's ableist, because if you had, like, a neurological disorder, you would not be able to use it.
That is very fair.
I was going to say, especially when we get into the, like, I loved, we brought it up in the beginning, but, like, the aerial shots of Calabrini Green, when we kind of get introduced to this neighborhood.
Isn't it Cabrini Green?
Is it Cabrini?
Calabrini? Isn't that like...
Oh, that's like a sausage.
Sounds like pasta or something.
No, I was like, are you talking about calamari? Calamari Green.
Cabrini Green. That's
it also sounds like that font. There's a font that's similar.
Oh my god.
It's like Cambria or something.
Yeah, Cambria, yeah.
Cabrini Green, which I didn't realize till after when we were watching, like, the special features that, like, they didn't even change the name of the neighborhood. Like, it's an actual...
Oh, that's legit a real neighborhood.
Yeah, like, it's a real neighborhood.
And I'm pretty sure they shot, like, in...
They did.
They did.
And actually, those youngsters, when the first time Bernadette and Helen go to Cabrini Green, were actually, like, gang members, like, that lived there.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. I thought that I thought that was interesting.
Sweet for authenticity, not
yeah,
sweet.
And they probably got a nice little paycheck and stuff, so...
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we would hope.
Hopefully they weren't exploited, although, frankly, I have my doubts.
They probably...
1992, a white film crew,
yeah.
Exploited.
And I mean, I was gonna say, like, definitely, and I'm sure, like, throughout, if you've watched this before you listen to this, like, throughout this, we'll be bringing up, like, this movie deals with a lot of issues of, like, race and class, but more so race and racism. So there's definitely, like, a lot of, social commentary, I guess is the best way to put it. Perceived social commentary in this. I thought there was a lot of, like, interesting points made throughout it about, like, gentrification. Especially when she, like, finds the blueprints to, like, her condo and the condos in Cabrini Green.
Well, the community housing.
Yeah, the community housing, but how essentially they're the exact same thing, and they
slapped some fucking plaster up and called it a condo. Like, it's just, literally, there's a fucking paper-thin veil between, you know, that, like, top tier and sort of, like, what they have ghettoized, right? Like,
and I thought that was kind of interesting because they were talking about how it was, her place was meant to be community housing, but there was no barrier between that condo, community housing, whatever.
Oh my god, yes. And did that not, like, send your sociological spidey senses, like, a tingling? Because I kept thinking of, like, the Burgess maps of, like, urban zoning and development and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, the kind of rings of, like...
It's very... like, and I don't think we fully comprehend it in Canada, but the US is extraordinarily segregated in terms of urban design itself as well. Like, I was reading a bit about Detroit, obviously, because I said I was reading about the papers. There's actually, like, in Detroit, there's actually a wall that separates, I think it's on 8 Mile. It separates the city from the suburbs, from, like, specifically white development in the suburbs. Yeah. And there's actually some parts of the suburbs in Detroit that you are inaccessible from these neighborhoods. So I think, yeah, in Canada, we kind of take it for granted. Although, you know, Roan and I live in a neighborhood that is very infamous. And, yeah, our neighborhood is segregated in terms of urban design. So I can kind of, like, you know, living here, I can kind of draw those parallels as well. But, I don't know about other cities. I mean, I haven't been to Vancouver. Calgary, we lived in Calgary. It's also segregated, but not in the same way. But, yeah, sorry. I digress.
Yeah, and I was going to say maybe, because I feel like a lot of this might be heavy conversation, because there's a lot of, like, heavy themes throughout this movie that I think are important to talk about. But maybe as a lighter note, I do want to say, like, Tony Todd, like, 2020 for president. Tony Todd is the man.
Tony Todd is still putting in the work, man. Like, he is always hustling.
Like I said, like, even though I know I've seen this multiple times, it was kind of like watching it for the first time because I didn't fully remember much of anything. And, like, it's a shame because I should remember, like, how good he is in this. Like, this movie is placed on his back. Like, without his performance, like, this movie falls apart. He, like, I had written down, like, he was just, like, so whimsical and so...
I thought he was, like, a very elegant, like, just a very, like, everything was very smooth, and, like, it was just very beautiful, and he was very elegant, and I think his costume really also played into that as well.
Oh, 100%. It was, like, this, alchemy of, like, the costuming, and, of course, like, things like the photography and like the music and stuff, but like, and like you said, his voice and his acting, but it was even just like when he was just standing there, it was his presence.
His presence.
He just like oozes charisma, but then of course, like you were saying, you got that beautiful jacket, and I even wrote a note about those fucking pants
and the shoes,
the shoes, and even the bloody goddamn stump hook was like elegant, and creepy. You know, it was just
and I thought too, like, just the way he like delivered the lines, like it really had like kind of, you know, like to me it felt like I was like listening to like Shakespearean poetry or something. Like he just really brought like this like real theatrical, like classical theatrical presence to the role that just like really made it unique. And like,
well, it was a very physical, and I mean, I think that's why it's so theatrical, is because it's like it's grounded in the physical, right? Like you said, it's his voice, his eyes, like everything. It's just, you know, like I have very complicated feelings about a lot of things in this movie, but like, and one of them is, you know, I'm like, oh god, this like fucking every time he appears, she like swoons and is like, ugh, and you know, I'm like, oh god, this like fucking white chick getting like swept off of her feet, and she's like, oh my god, this like tall black man, right? And it's like, but at the same time, like you understand it, right? Because it's like he just sells like through every atom in his body, like every look he gives, like when he's talking to her, and like you're saying, his voice, it's like rumbles, and you know, it's got this like fucking bass that like pierces your soul. But also, like, you know, when he's talking to her and he, like, kind of, like, tilts his head back and, like, rolls his eyes back into his head, and it's kind of like he's in ecstasy, and it's this, like, religious thing, which I think is also, like, kind of a thread running through the movie. It's, like, folklore, but also religion. You know, and it's like he's going into ecstasy, and it's, like, this Jesus figure or something, and I just, like, think it's so fucking brilliant, you know?
And I love the scene, we briefly brought it up earlier, so, like, me and Exilio watched the collector's edition, the Screen Factory edition, and we chose to go with, like, the unrated cut instead of the theatrical release. So there was, like, a little bit of added stuff. One of the scenes that was extended in the unrated cut was, when they're, kind of in the lair, and, like, they're doing, like, the ballroom dance, essentially, and the camera's spinning around and around, and it's, you know, it's doing this, like, hypnotic, the background's just blurring, but they're focused, and they're kind of dancing, and it was just, like, yeah, it's, like, literally everything. We already said it, Tony Todd is God.
The special features actually made me kind of, like, think a bit differently about the movie, to be honest, because it is like, if you really get down to it, actually their relationship is quite romantic in a way. It's very intimate because he, like, and that's what the whole thing with the ballroom dancing, there's actually a scene when they're in the lair and where they have the bees and everything towards the end, and they were actually supposed to kiss, but 1992, the film studio just thought that a black man and a white woman kissing on screen was just like far too risque and taboo to actually put in the movie, so they cut that part. But
yeah, there's obviously, you know, one of the difficulties with talking about this movie is like there's so much. I mean, it's really rooted in like race and racism, and there's like so much to unpack.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know, and like Mike brought up, like there's this theme, and Exilia brought up as well. Like there's, you know, this very European white narrative told throughout the story. Like this is, you know, a black man like lusting after a white woman. So you really have like, you know, these thoughts of you know, this the trope of that, and you know, King Kong and A Birth of a Nation.
Oh yeah, and it's just this like colonial like aftershock, I guess.
Yeah, and like I think it's important to note like the director is white
and British, I believe.
Yeah, and British, and I guess it's probably as good a time as any. Like, if you didn't know and you're listening, like, so this is based off a Clive Barker story called The Forbidden
King.
Yes, King Barker. If you don't read Clive Barker, there's something wrong with you.
Just be gone. There's the door. Sashay away.
So, and that's the biggest kind of departure from the story, is that Clive Barker's story was solely based on class, because of course he's British, and he wrote it about, you know, the issues in Britain, which are primarily class. So it was about lower and higher class and this hierarchy. And then the director decided he wanted to put it in America about race. And, you know, whether or not he did it well or not, I guess is up for debate.
Well, I mean, and I guess at the time they were probably filming this. It came out in, 92?
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, my timeline might be slightly smudged here, but I feel like the early 90s was like when they were, you know, having all sorts of like the race riots and all sorts of shit like that, and like Rodney King and all that. So I feel like maybe he was like, let's sort of transpose this to America, and kind of like, you still have the race or the class element story, but, you know, in America, you've got that, like, undeniable intertwining of, like, race and class.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the relationship is there. You can't have one without the other, essentially. You can't talk about one without talking about the other.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah, and I was going to say, like, I was trying to decide what I was going to keep for, like, the fact part of the episode, but I feel like a lot of them you have to kind of intertwine with the story. So, like, when me and Exilia were watching special features, they interviewed Tony Todd, and he talked about, like, essentially the backstory of Candyman, about him being, like, this artist in slavery times, and having his arm cut off, and the love of his life killed, like, because they had a child together, and they were an interracial couple. Like, he was saying that was actually, like, his entire concept, because he said the original script didn't have that. Candyman was just kind of a monster, a horror monster with no backstory. And I think he kind of recognized, like, he was like...
that it was hideously problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he felt like, you know, I can bring this story, and there really is a great horror story here. And I think, yeah, he just kind of helped shaped it to play a little better.
I think, too, like, yeah, without that would have been, like, very, like, you know, no pun intended, black and white, just very, like,
no, I was gonna say that would have put it to, like, a one-dimensional,
mm-hmm.
you know.
When you really think about it, like, Candyman and Helen are both victims and they're both monsters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Every note I have is like, I was saying to Rowan in our preamble when we were setting up, and Exilia was updating her computer software. How most of my viewings of this movie, I've seen it many times during my life, but probably 75% of those were like, this started when I was like 14 and kind of watched it a lot, on old VHS tapes when I was like a teenager and stuff like that, and in my early 20s, and I haven't really watched it very much in the last 12 or 13 years, but watching it now sort of as an adult and, getting out of that, like, taking everything literally when you're a youngster phase, like, it was like watching a whole new movie, because I was watching this, and, I mean, feel free to agree or disagree or what have you, but when I was a youngster, obviously, I was trained on, like, slasher movies where I would, like, identify with, like, the female and the final girl, and I keep saying to this, the hill I will die on is that slasher movies turn me into a feminist. Like, I don't care what anybody says about how they, like, treat women or whatever, but I'm like, I was like, women can do anything. The men are fucking scum. They suck. They're useless. But in this movie, I like coming back on it now and revisiting it years later, and hopefully with like a more worldly state of mind, is that I mostly view Helen as the villain.
Yeah.
Or not as a hero. Do you know what I mean by that? Like,
I certainly wouldn't call her a hero, that's for sure, because quite honestly, what she's doing in the first place is really exploitative.
Oh, absolutely. The whole movie is just her invading.
Yeah.
Like crossing boundaries and invading areas that she has no business in, and sort of like, wearing her like privilege and like entitlement as like fucking armor, and then thinking that, she's going to be shielded from like reality and violence.
Yeah. Well, because she knows that if she goes to Cabrini Green, oh my God, I keep saying Cabrini Green, this is going to make a fantastic thesis. That's like a career maker kind of deal, if it's done properly. So she's essentially, and because she doesn't believe in Candyman at the beginning, she really just thinks it's a story that the community uses to kind of understand their problems, or something, you know what I'm saying here. Basically, she goes there, she exploits their lives and their stories to attempt to like start her academic career. And I just find
there's that scene where they just fucking freak their shit out because they're like, we're going to be published. Like, that's all they care about. The only thing they care about is that they're going to be published. And there's a point in this movie, and at first I was rewatching it and I was like, oh wow, she's acknowledging her white privilege, because there are 2 or 3 moments in the movie, like, well, probably the first third of the movie or so before it goes off into the like, psychosis deep end, that she, openly acknowledges, like, verbally, like, I have white privilege, and, like, the only reason they care is because I'm a white woman and I was
when
there.
she gets beaten
but
up.
But she acknowledges that she has white privilege, like, 4 times during this movie, and never does anything to solve it.
To change it. I think that's
she just
really,
acknowledges it and then does not try to solve it. She does not call the cops out on anything until it's too late, and she's obviously, like, chained to a fucking gurney.
I feel like
and they're not going to believe anything she had to say anyway.
Well, I think that's really true to life, true to real life, because I mean, if all the white people, I mean, you can acknowledge it, but are you going to do it? Are you going to do anything about it? Most people don't, and that's how white privilege is, perpetuated.
Yes, exactly. And to me, I was watching it, and it kind of like screamed. It was sort of tragicomic, because I was looking at this now, obviously from a lens of like, the cultural lexicon that we have sort of developed in the last 10, 15 years. And you know, you have that phrase like classic white feminist, and it's sort of like a joke because to me, I was watching her and I was like, and I love this movie. I love Virginia Madsen. The character's great and everything, but I was like, she is a classic white feminist.
Oh, for sure.
She is like, oh, she's so woke and she's not afraid to go down to, you know, the projects again because she's wearing her entitlement as fucking armor.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, it's like she is not, when it comes down to it, all she cares about is like, am I going to get published? Oh, did my camera survive? Did I get my pictures? Like,
yeah.
It's not like, oh, am I going to get justice for these people? Like, no.
No.
Well, I was going to say, like, and you really see that, I think, too, like, when she's first interacting with, like, the young boy from the neighborhood. Because, I mean, she's essentially, like, exploiting the boy as much as possible. Like, he says, like, oh, like, I was told, not to help you and stuff. And she does, like, whatever she can to convince him to, like, help her explore and, like, do what she needs to do to get her information out there. Even if it's gonna, like, put this boy in harm's way, like, she's aware it's controlled by gangs. It's probably gang members that are, like, don't help her, stay away from her, and she's, like, giving this false, like, she knows she, like, can't protect this kid because she's gonna leave when she gets her pictures, and she's like, oh, don't worry, like, if you help me, like, no one will know, and you'll be perfectly okay, and, like, everything will be fine.
Oh, it's hideously exploitative, and, again, it's another example, like that scene right there, of her knowing that she has privilege, because she actually says to him when she kind of sits down with him, she's like, oh, it's okay, you're not gonna get in trouble, I'm not a cop.
I'm not.
And she keeps saying, like, I'm not a cop, you're not gonna get in trouble. You know, and, like, to me, it was just like, holy fuck, like, you know, she knows the fucking score. Like, that's why, to me, she's, like villainous in a way. And again, it's not malicious. I don't think she realizes she's doing it. But it's, like, kind
of self-centered.
But it's this insidious, absolutely, like, this, you know, white supremacist sort of, like...
I just find it really the more I just, like, think about it, I just find it really disrespectful to, like, go into someone else's community that really she has, like, no business being there, and, like, go into their apartments and, like, go, like, crawl through, like, you know, I don't know, I just find that really off-putting. I think
she literally crosses boundaries. Like, it's
yeah,
you know, like, when she crawls through the hole and it's, like, Candyman's mouth, like, I was watching that and just going, like, that to me is her going, like, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole now. Like, fuck you.
Imagine if it was...
This is my space now.
Exactly. She's, like, taking over the space. Imagine if that was, like, reversed, right? One of them come into, like, her condo. No, those kids would have, the police called on them.
Well, yes, and it's so funny that you say that, because think about it. In that scene when she's back in her condo, and, you know, they've got that empty apartment next door, and she's, I guess, trying to figure out if she's crazy or not, and she calls Candyman in her bathroom, and his fucking hook, you know, busts through her thing. And that's exactly what it is. And she runs and gets on the phone and tries to call the fucking cops and, like, freaks out. And it's like, you were him. It's just literally them flip-flopping the roles, right? Like, it blows my mind. Like, but, like, it's a totally, like, and then from her perspective, it's this hysterical, like, oh my god, it's this fucking bloody hook coming through my wall. But, like, she was the bloody hook, you know what I mean?
Exactly. She was taking up the same amount of space.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting enough, too, also in the special features, her reaction in that scene when the hook comes out is real. Like, she didn't know that was going to be happening.
That part did make me, like, shit my pants a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. Like, there are several moments in this movie that either make my skin crawl or, like, genuinely frighten the shit out of me. And that's one of the reasons why, when I was a teenager, we watched it so much, because it was literally one of the probably 3 or 4 horror movies I ever watched that had moments in it that really, like, frightened me or made me uneasy. And, like, I mean, it makes sense.
See, and I feel weird because there was nothing that really jump scare wise got me, and I can't even it's this weird relationship feeling I have to this movie because nothing I can say overall scared me, but it's yet again it was just literally my eyes were glued to it. That's how interested in Tony Todd I was.
Without him so Rowan and I were having this conversation because Jordan Peele's redoing Candyman, and we were kind of talking about,
oh my god, yes, please.
It's personally I love Jordan Peele, so I feel like it's going to be amazing, but I haven't seen it, so I don't know. But yeah, I guess because Rowan,
yeah, we were
just saying how is this movie going to be without him?
Well, and they have the more I looked into it, I know they haven't 100% said he won't be in it. I think the director said they plan on having him in it in some sort of capacity that they're trying to do. To me, it kind of sounds like they might be trying to do somehow someone else becomes a Candyman or something. But yeah, I just find it's one of those things I was saying to Exilia, to me it's like Nightmare on Elm Street or even kind of the reactions that we're seeing online now with the Child's Play thing is I feel like there's this canon and the actor still wants to do stuff with this character, and I just I guess it's one of those things, that can be decisive in the horror community is I'm why do we need a remake if we still have this actor that can still play this amazing character?
And I mean, sometimes you get these properties where the people who originated it have moved on and don't want anything to do with it. And just, nope, leave me alone. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to talk about it. But at the same time, there are a lot of people who are very grateful and they're this is part of my career. This is who I am. You know what I mean? I'm proud to be a part of this, and please let me be involved, if you do anything. And I think that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, he said that on his gravestone, the first 3 lines are probably going to say something about Candyman. And he said, I'm very much okay with that.
Yes.
I think he really loved the character and
well, and I said, it's hard when you think about it being redone. To me, I'm it's hard to think of someone that would be able to handle that role like he did and be as powerful as he was on screen. Because I said, when I watch this movie, I'm watching this movie for him, for his performance.
But I mean, he had that alchemy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes with an actor, if you look at them and, I never want to kind of put any limits on anybody as an artist or an actor or a director or anything. But sometimes, and it's that weird, almost semi-spiritual thing where I will look at somebody and go, this is the book that they were meant to write. This is the album they were meant to record, or this is the role they were meant to play, etc. And it's, to me, everything he has ever done has always been a callback to Candyman. Not because it's the first thing that I saw him in. I mean, sure, when you're a youngster and you only know this one thing, you can't sort of see past that. But even over the years, as I've watched this numerous times and I've seen him in numerous other things, and I've seen, it, to me, it was that perfect alchemy. It was planets aligning that this person and this role lined up, because I can't see it any other way, and I feel this role and this actor are celestially intertwined. You know what I mean? It was such a perfect meshing that there's a small chance that you can recreate that in another way. Obviously, it's not going to be the same, but it's why even try? It's
yeah.
Trying to make planets align again. You can't do it. It's going to take decades and centuries and millennia.
No, for sure.
And one thing I was going to say, too, I guess a little off that topic, but about the movie was, like, I was also very surprised. I think in my mind, for some reason, I had envisioned that this was actually a lot gorier than it actually was, which I was impressed, because as someone that, you know, I'm all about, like, bring on the gore, like, let's see the kills, that, I mean, to me, this is, like, it's relatively pretty tame for, like, a R horror. And
oh, yeah, I mean, there was only a handful of kills, and they were... I mean, there were a couple of gory ones, but it was fairly subtle.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, they were really well done. Like, the story progressed really well. Like, I was interested the whole time. I don't think there was any point in the movie that I was like, you know, this should be cut, and let's get to the kills.
No, exactly. But, like, when it did, it really, like, affected you. Like, the one thing, and again, remember how I said there was a couple of scenes in this that my whole life haunted me and made my skin crawl, and, like, one of the reasons why I thought this was, you know, one of my favorite, like, you know, capital S scary movies of all time. Like, for example, one of the scenes that I always think of as being absolutely horrific that I've never been able to forget, and every time I watch it, it makes me uncomfortable. Even today, you know, 20-something years after I first saw it, still makes my hair stand on end. But it, to me, like, is maybe sort of what you're thinking of in terms of, like, the way we remember it as a, like, culture is misrepresentative, is, like, that scene when, you know, she first sees actual Candyman and passes out, and then she wakes up in Anne-Marie's apartment, and right off the bat, you have a decapitated animal, which is,
yeah,
you know, first of all, one of the way you signal an extreme movie is, like, showing the aftermath or the actual death of an animal, right? Because it's such a, like, cultural taboo.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when she wakes up and she's legitimately, like, doesn't know where she is or what's happening, and she picks up the cleaver, and there's just blood splattered all over the walls. And now it turns out, you know, obviously the baby was not dead, etc. But, like, and to me, like, you look at that scene, A, it's fucking scary as hell, but B, that's one of the things people remember a lot of the time. So you remember it as being this, like, blood all over the place. Like, there's literally just blood splattered all over her clothes and the wall of the nursery, and there's a decapitated head on the floor, and she's slipping around in the blood. And, you know, it's just sort of like this, like, metonymy for the rest of the movie. You remember, like, these 2 or 3 scenes, and it's like, it's not actually that violent. Like, that is a horrific scene, and it, like, really disturbs you, but that's the hook of the movie, right? Like, it's...
Good
if
pun,
it was,
man.
if it...
Good pun.
No, it really... But it is, though, right? Like, it's the metaphorical and literal hook of the movie. Like, there's so much, like you said, there's so much to unpack in this, and there's so much fucking working at this that you have this horrific, like, bloody scene, but then it quickly moves on to, like, these other ideas, and I don't know, like you said, it's not even that violent. It's there's a couple of scenes, I mean, they're even the blood all over the walls is actually fairly subtle, because you don't see the dog getting beheaded, you don't see a baby dying, you don't see the blood splattering everywhere. You know, there's the scene where she smacks Anne-Marie in the shoulder with the cleaver, and the blood spurts out for, like, 1 second, but I mean, other than that, you kind of get, like, a jolt, and it's like, holy shit, that's a bit extreme. But
yeah,
you know, the rest of the movie is not actually like that. It's mostly, like, exploring these really subtle ideas, and I just really appreciate that.
I do want to say shout out to the lamest part of the movie where they have her in the hospital, and they have her, like, tied down, and they, like, you know, when they go to give her, like, the needle, and it's, like, the worst worst fake poke ever. Like, it's not even, like, you can literally just see them, like, slide it beside her and not even touch her, and then they, like, pretend that they...
Also, when Bernadette's dead and the police are at the house, the blue...
Oh my god, her blue face! Oh my god, that blue face! Oh my god!
It was horrible.
I'm like, this poor woman has been dead for like 45 minutes at most. And I'm thinking if like the cops went from the other end of Chicago and were like, let's stop and get some fucking coffee and shit on the way, like they would have had to been like every 5 minutes go like somebody needs to get out and take a piss, like, you know what I mean? It's just.
So I want to know, I guess a fun little question about the movie. I want to know, what was everyone's favorite part of the movie?
That's actually a very tough question.
Yeah, that's a really hard question.
I have many favorite parts. There's just so much going on in this.
Most memorable part.
Probably the bees coming out of his mouth.
No, well, I mean, I feel like I already discussed mine just then at length. Was that scene where she wakes up in the apartment? Because to me, no, I have nightmares. I like literally watching this earlier today to make some notes on it. Like, and I knew I've seen this movie, like I said, dozens of times over my teen years and throughout my early 20s. I knew what was happening. I can tell you every beat of this movie, but as soon as she passed out, and I knew I have 10 seconds until she opens her eyes and is in that apartment, that is, to me, the single most horrific part. And because this poor fucking woman is there, her dog is dead, there's blood all over her apartment, her baby has disappeared, and, you know, like, yes, it's horrific when you, like, put yourself in the perspective of the quote-unquote protagonist of the movie, which, you know, of course, in, like, kind of Freudian film theory, they would have you do, like, that's your perspective, right? Like, that's who you empathize with. But, you know, to me, anybody who's also, like, a citizen of the world will go, yeah, you know what? There's this woman who came home from probably a really goddamn hard day at work in the projects, and there's this white bitch with a bloody cleaver in her apartment, and her baby's gone, and there's blood everywhere, and her animal's dead. Like, you know, like, to me, there's just so much horror happening. It still makes my skin crawl.
A cleaver in their arm. It's not Anne Marie.
No, it's not Anne Marie. And, like, frankly, every time Helen got attacked, I was like, bitch, you deserve it. You need to, like, your white privilege, you have not done anything about this, so you need to take a couple hits.
I think it is this. My favorite would be either the scene where with the bees, and I just like that whole scene, or like this scene in the parking garage where we're first, where she first sees him.
Well, and then that ties into the romanticism of it, the eroticism. Yeah. Let's face facts. It's romanticism and eroticism.
Yeah, for sure. And I just like, and I love just like when he's standing across the parking lot or the parking garage, and he's just like, he is such a statuesque person, and just everything about his presence specifically in that scene. I just, also I love her sunglasses, but, yeah, those are my two.
Is it just me, or were they always sort of askew?
I think they
because,
were.
Okay, and I'm gonna jump into it because we're not doing this chronologically, and I'm gonna talk a lot right now. Of course, you know my theory that she is the villain of this movie, and frankly, I'm gonna say that I don't even think my new reading of this movie is that Candyman does not exist, and she is a psychotic bitch who kills a lot of people. And there's lots of class and race issues. But anyway,
well, I was gonna say too. I mean, your theory isn't wrong because at the end of the movie, she is the villain.
I mean, I think she's the villain the whole time, though. You don't have to be, like, an explicit murderer to be the villain.
No. And again, and like, to me, this was a reawakening, I guess, because, again, I watched this numerous times when I was a teenager, and my milieu at the time was white suburban, bullshit, and, also, I was coming off of, watching a lot of, like, I spent my time when I was a youngster watching, like, the old movie channels and stuff, so I would watch a lot of, like, old thrillers from the 60s and, like, Hitchcock movies. So when I was watching this, to me, it was, like, a horror version of, like, a Hitchcockian, it's always, like, the man wrongly accused, and he has to, like, fight against the system and like prove, no, I'm not the crazy one, like it's actually this other thing. And so to me, like when I was watching it in my teens and my early 20s, like I was just kind of coming at it from that perspective. I was just looking at it as like a horrific, Chicago version of a Hitchcock movie. But then again, coming back to it like 10 years later, I realized this was not the case, and it was not that she was a nut bar to them, but actually like a victim of this supernatural thing. I just think bitch was fucking crazy. And I think she was, it's like the horror of white privilege. Am I wrong in thinking this?
I'm just like trying to like go through the whole movie in my head to think about this as you're saying it.
And I was going to say,
sorry, I have a lot of, like I said, I have a lot of thoughts about this movie, and to me, coming at it from two different perspectives in two vastly different
like
poles of my life,
yeah, for sure,
was a really interesting experience.
Be the next movie candidate for the blog.
Oh my god, yes! It Slays Unpacked, Candyman. We are gonna have a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, it's just like we said, kind of when we started talking about this movie is, I mean, obviously we're not going to be able to get to everything in this, and it's such a
there's a lot of layers.
There's a lot of layers, and there's a lot of it can be very academic if you want it to. It can be very plain and normie if you want.
No, but it's true when you think about it. Like they are academics, and you're sort of like right from the get-go, they are recording people and talking about them and analyzing them and saying like, how can we use this in our thesis? So to me, again, when I'm 14 years old and watching this, I'm just like, oh, this is sort of like character development. This is who they are. They're like the, brainy girls or whatever. But like now rewatching it 20 years later, it's like, no, he's actually saying to us like, they are supposed to be coming at this from an academic perspective. They are thinking critically about these, or supposed to be thinking critically about these urban legends and stuff. So like maybe to me that was sort of like a signal, a trigger to go, they are thinking critically about these ideas, so maybe you should be too.
You should be too.
Yeah.
From the academic aspect, like when you're in academia, especially in social sciences, and you have to study people, there's a power dynamic there too, which I think is really interesting. And I don't like to call them subjects because in my mind, like when I do my work, I don't really think of people as subjects, but, certainly classical sociology does, and sociology in 1992 certainly does. So I think that that's an interesting, I just really think that there's a huge power dynamic there that when you're in like a social science in academia, you kind of get a bit more than like someone just watching it that doesn't know the ins and outs of that stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so funny that you bring that up because like right from the get-go, the introduction we have to these characters is that, they are these privileged women who are sitting in, and you don't even know. And again, like they kind of like look like they're in their 40s or whatever, but they're dressed nicely and they're sitting in the classrooms and they're like, are these actually professors or what are they? But like, they are the ones in control of these interviews. And then, the sort of like key that cracks open the whole movie is when they interview the cleaning ladies, those two black cleaning ladies. And like to me, again, that is this like small scene, but it really like there's so much to unpack there. It's this like fucking kernel of like these privileged ladies, one of them being, like white, blonde, like, I mean, very Aryan, let's face it. And, it's not even a race thing. It's class and race intertwined because it's like they're also like, oh yeah, the two cleaning ladies, right? Like,
And now that I'm like, I'm like thinking back to what we kind of talked about towards the beginning of the podcast about how they're just going into this place, exploiting their story and leaving. That has a lot of ethical implications in terms of a research project. That is spoken a bit more in like progressive academic circles as like, you know, and in fact, when you do your ethics application, that's like a big thing they try to steer you away from doing. Just like
now it is.
Yeah, now it is. Yeah. So like that actually is like quite unethical when you're doing research. So like this then leads again to this white privilege and this, you know, her really kind of being a more villain type character. I don't know. I'm just like, I'm glad we're having this conversation because it's now like as I'm talking and I'm talking to you guys and I'm thinking it through, like, even in the past like hour or whatever, my opinions have kind of, you know, been developing about the movie.
Oh yeah, this is, and to me, this is sort of like the power of this movie. Like
it definitely
you
opens
could
up
literally over
conversation.
90 minutes just completely and utterly like your mind just is like pretzeling on itself, like in how you respond to this movie because there's so much going on in it.
And we haven't even. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like whether it's intended or not. Like this to me, this is, and I will like this is why I will constantly watch this movie, and I think it's so brilliant is because there's just so much to fucking unpack.
Yeah.
There's so much here we will never. You could write a whole book, and I don't know how it hasn't been done already. Like a whole academic study on Candyman, because there is so much going on.
There are quite a few academic articles on this. I briefly browsed a couple, just like the synopsis of a couple, and actually one of my mentors...
Must be nice to have JSTOR access.
Sorry. One of my I haven't fully read the book, but I do remember one of my mentors, she actually went to Northwestern, which is in Chicago, and her supervisor, Gary Fine, he wrote a book, and I have it here somewhere. I think it's called like Rumors on the Color Line or something, and it's about how stories are passed through like different cultural groups. And I believe it's been a year or two since I've like started reading it vaguely, but he actually talks about Candyman in the beginning, which I thought was quite interesting too, especially where he's in Chicago.
I was gonna say too, before we get into like rating it and all that kind of stuff, I kind of wanted to bring up a somewhat academic thing, I guess. I wanted to talk about towards the ending a bit, and I kind of wanted to get your feelings, Mike, on when she bursts into the apartment and we get the girlfriend painting the house, and I could not watch that scene without thinking about you because I knew that was your favorite part.
Okay. First of all, let's just address let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way, because in previous conversations, I may have mentioned that one of my favorite parts of Candyman is at the end when Stacy, the, nubile, blonde, fucking replacement Virginia Madsen, at the end when she has that, sheer, bizarre silk shirt on and, her nipples are just, poking out through it. And I know that's where Rowan started off with this. Because it's the nipply ending of the movie.
The nipply ending. It was an interesting...
But yes, go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was an interesting wardrobe choice.
Yes, of course it was. I also would like to say that aside from her clingy costuming, really all she has to offer at this point, because at the beginning, it's fair enough. She's clearly supposed to be obviously into dude, and they kind of have to telegraph it by having her turn around and exorcist spin her head so that she's looking in a 180 degree. Her neck just does not exist. It's just a fleshy thing on top of her shoulders. But that last part of the movie when it's her and Trevor, Xander Berkeley, in the apartment, they're painting it pink, and I'm like, are you seriously ruining this beautiful condo with this hideous pink paint?
Yeah.
Oh my god, like, I love a good solid, like, I'm sitting in my kitchen right now at my kitchen table, and it is a beautiful, like, blood orange color, and it's very classy and elegant. That pink is neither classy nor elegant. That pink is Xander Berkeley's having a midlife crisis, and he's sleeping with this bitch that does not wear a bra. Like, that is all I have to say about that. But anyway, she clearly went to the school of acting through your pretending to sneeze and laugh, because for 5 solid minutes she is standing there in the background, and I can't tell whether she's laughing or crying. And I'm pretty sure it's both. And then every time that Virginia Madsen's character looks at her, she holds her hand up in front of her face like she's trying to hold in a sneeze. And I know it's because she's holding her hand up in front of her face because clearly this poor, probably never been in any other movie in her life actress doesn't know how to actually, like, convey fear. Or any kind of ambivalence. Like, that's not ambivalence. Like, the fact that this bitch wants to laugh and cry at the same time, that's, like, it's not even ambivalence. It's, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's sending mixed signals.
And I was gonna say, like, I totally get it. Like, throughout the movie, Trevor is a sleazebag, and he's cheating on her, and...
He is, but, Helen's also clearly fucking psychotic. Like,
well,
my theory is that Candyman doesn't even exist. Like, this is all... I know the whole, like, her being thrown into a mental institution is, like, again, this sort of callback to, like... To me, I always interpret it as Hitchcockian, like, they're gaslighting her. And I know that's, like, again, this cultural concept that has come into vogue in the last year or so, with the, like, kind of current... shitstorm of politics in the States right now. But, like, to me, like, I always interpreted it as, like, gaslighting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I just kind of felt like I was with her. I was with Helen for the struggle. But I was like, at the end there, I'm like, is it really this guy's fault that he... I mean, like, she should be in jail for multiple murders. So he's probably like, well, like, I feel like the relationship's...
kind of deteriorated.
Yeah, it's kind of done there.
Yes, and they do have that moment, and I think it's so briefly touched upon that you kind of hear it and then forget about it without actually absorbing it. But, when she's in the room with the psychiatrist... when she's chained down to the chair, and he does tell her it's been like a month or 2 months or whatever. Like, that's one of those things that you kind of go, holy fuck. And then in the ensuing conversation, and the fact that Candyman appears behind him and, apparently, quote unquote, like, gores him in the back. These are these weird little tiny crumbs that, the director, as a Brother Grimm, is kind of, like, leading you into, like, the witch's fucking house that she's gonna, like, throw you in the oven in. But, like, to me, that was, like, another clue that, Helen is fucked up. She is drugged out of her mind. Again, she's got this, like, insane white privilege thing going on, and there's all these elements. It's this huge cauldron that you can't, like, to me, I can't separate one thing from the other, and that's why this movie is so effective. Like, I've got this shit going on where, like, you kind of look at her as a victim, but you kind of look at her as a villain, and it's like, is she crazy? Is this supernatural? Like, and I'm not looking at any of the sequels, because I don't want to, like, I want to just keep this movie separate from everything else, but it's like, fuck. Like, the fact that you have been on Thorazine for like 2 months and don't even, it's like months after, like, your husband has moved on. Like, I do not blame him for moving on, because his wife has been, she murdered, like, from his perspective, 2 people and a dog, at least, if not more. And one of them is her best friend.
He moved on prior to the murders.
Okay, yes. Do not get me wrong. He is also a bit of a scuzz bucket. I'm not letting him off the hook for being a scuzz bucket, but I'm also saying, like,
you can't blame him for being like, okay, maybe this relationship is over.
The relationship was perhaps over months before that. I don't know. Like, we are not a fly on their bedroom wall, unfortunately. But I just feel like, when I watched it as a teenager, I was always like, that fucking cunt, like, how dare he? And I can't, like, when she would show up at the very end of the movie and, like, her hair was all burned off and she had the hook in her hand, I was like, yeah, you fucking gore that cunt. But now, like, I'm looking at it and going, I kind of understand that, like, he moved on, you know what I mean? It was an asshole move. And he was probably, like, making moves on that student beforehand, but, like,
Definitely.
but again, like, it's this ambivalence, and that's what's so brilliant about this movie. You just keep going back and forth. Like, I think he's a bit of a cunt, but also I think she's a horrific villain in this movie, and she, like, crossed so many boundaries and, like, used her privilege and did nothing to help anybody. So, she is the villain, and I feel like her showing up and killing him at the end is actually, like, not, it's like a good thing and a bad thing.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
So do we want to get into rating this? I feel like we could literally talk about this movie for 4
there's
hours.
just, yeah, we won't go there. We will not make this a quadruple episode.
Let's start with you, Mike.
I will give it a yay instead of a slay. When I was when I was a teenager, I would have been like, slay, slay, slay. Like, Candyman's one of my favorites. But there's so much going on in this that, like, I honestly can't even land on a rating for it, because it's a very slippery movie. Again, it's a movie that is so, like, it's this weird thing where, like, it's about race and class at its core, but it also avoids dealing with issues of race and class for the most part. Like, it kind of flicks upon them, but doesn't actually deal with them. Again, because you look at her and she's, like, acknowledges her white privilege. She's like, yeah, the only reason that the cops even came to Cabrini Green is because I'm, this blonde white girl. But, like, she doesn't do anything about it. Yeah. And to me, that's sort of a central issue with the movie. Like, I love it. There's horrific aspects to it, and there are scenes it's brilliantly shot, brilliantly acted, everything about it. But, like, I also have problems with it. Like, a lot of problems. And I feel like, to me, that's a great thing about this movie, is that, like, it asks questions and doesn't give you answers. So, like, I feel like for years now, like, since I've rewatched it, I will be thinking about this movie and, like, thinking about the issues that it brings up. So I will yay it instead of slaying, because I can't say it's a masterpiece. In a way it is, because it's going to make me think for, like, the next 10 years. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Why don't you go next, Rowan? You always go last.
So I really didn't know what I was going to give this. But I am going to give it a slay. I know, I feel like I'm always really kind to movies. I always give them slays. But
you love everything. You love everything.
I know. But this is like, maybe even like a slay plus for me. There's many...
I love it.
There's many problematic things in this movie. I definitely... I did.
Oh my god.
Mike's throwing us off with these pictures.
Get rid of that one.
I definitely think there's issues in it, but to me, like, I keep saying it, like, Tony Todd transcends everything. Like, I literally, for weeks now, will not have his portrayal of this character out of my head. The music's in my head. like, I just keep thinking about this movie, and even with all the problematic things, I love the conversations it brings up sociologically, and just as movie lovers, and our opinions on it. And I love that it opens up that conversation, even if I don't agree that, that I think it's necessarily the place of, English white director to bring those conversations to the forefront. But yeah, I really like this movie.
But like he does bring those conversations up, and that's what's so interesting about it. Like,
exactly.
Here we are. We're talking about it. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exilia.
Okay, so I love the music. The music is amazing. Same with Rowan. Like, Tony Todd's probably one of my favorite characters, period. I will be thinking about this movie. I love him. It's certainly problematic in a lot of respects, but the same thing you guys have said. Yes, the movie doesn't answer a lot of these things and doesn't go deep delve into, gender and race and class and 1,000 other things, but it's a starting point for a conversation to do those things. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a slay as well.
I'm very surprised.
Really? Oh, I knew. I'm
just surprised because Exilia never gives anything a slay. So
I gave it 5.
Okay, can I amend my rating to
Sure.
Yay plus plus?
Yay
Almost
plus
slay.
plus.
No, but I'm just like, and hearing you guys, like, the passion that we all have for it. Like, to me, This is sort of like why we love horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, like, this is sort of has brought this out of me tonight, and again, it raises questions that you don't necessarily have the answers to, but like, we are, and I'm sure anybody who's listening to this, you would love to sit around and have a few beers and smoke a joint and talk about this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want to watch the movie and talk about it because it may not answer the questions, but it fucking raises them. And the fact that it has the courage to raise these questions is the power of the movie and the power of the actors.
And I think another really beautiful thing about the movie is that, like we've said, how we feel about it changes throughout time. So it's a movie you can keep watching over and over and over again, because not only do you change as a human being and you evolve and you age and you gain wisdom, but the social context around us changes. And I mean, race and class and gender and all that, those are like the big 3, right? So those things are always going to be, at least until, we're dead, right? As long as we live, those are always going to be things that are evolving, that are really going to shape our everyday lives. So, I mean, it's something that we can just always watch. In 10 years, I'll watch it. Well, I mean, I'm sure I'll watch it before 10 years, but I'll watch it again and my perception might have completely changed again. So.
And I will say, too, that, because I forgot to say it when I gave it the rating, a big thing I appreciate about this movie is, like, obviously we said at the beginning, especially me and Mike, like, we're big Clive Barker fans. And even though Clive Barker only, like, sold the rights so the director could make this movie, I felt like this was a Clive Barker movie. Like, it felt like one he would have directed and produced himself. So I really like that the director almost kept that very Clive Barker imprint on it. It definitely had that feel with kind of like the gothic theatrical stuff in it.
Absolutely.
I wanted to bring that up.
And speaking of Clive Barker, segue into our viewer poll for next month.
Yes.
I just want to say that before Rowan announces our viewer poll for next month, because he's the one doing it, when he does, I will just say that I had to director's cut one of my choices out of it, which was Hellraiser 2 Hellbound.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was before Ro announces our choices for our poll, which will be up on the Facebook page, etc. One of the original choices I had was Hellraiser 2. I just wanted to throw that out there now, but clearly I thought Hellraiser 2 and the other two choices that I threw out were in completely different leagues, so I just chopped Hellraiser 2 out of it.
Well, I'll keep that in mind. Jeez. But first I want to get to the budget game.
Ooh, I love the budget game.
I know. So how much do we think it cost to make this?
Okay, but we have to think in terms of, like, 1992.
Maybe, like, $5 million? I'm really terrible at this. I don't know.
I'm gonna say, like, 30 million, because I think 5 million is, like, what you'd spend on... That's, like... Bitch, please. That's what you'd spend on, like, the shoes for this movie.
True.
So...
Do you know how much that clingy, like, show off her nipples silk shirt at the end of that movie cost? That was probably, like, $2,000.
So the budget to create this movie was $6 million.
Oh, so close. So close.
Did you not say 30 million? I said 5.
Didn't I say 5?
No, I said 5, and you berated me for the past 2 minutes about it.
Let's see if you can redeem yourself, Mike. How much money do you think it made?
75 million.
50 million.
You were always the lowballer. Exilia, I'm just going to say it right now, on air, for all of our podcast listeners to hear. Exilia Fraser is the person who, on The Price is Right, votes $1 every time on the Showcase Showdown.
It's true.
$1 every time, because she doesn't want to commit to an actual goddamn number. So she just lowballs it at $1 and then leaves it there and lets everybody else to dry in the wind.
It is not your night, Mike. So it made $25.7 million.
Nice. I mean, I was the closest. It's still like half of what
So that was definitely enough. This got a sequel as well as another one. So there is 3 movies.
Also, the sequel, because we are all fans of the OC.
I know, Kelly Rowan.
Kelly Rowan was the main character in the sequel.
I've never seen the second one, but
I watched the second one before the OC was ever on the air. So when the OC came on and Kelly Rowan was a character, I was like, that's the girl from Candyman too.
You guys, do you know how many times we reference the OC? The OC is like
every
very
episode.
well connected. Like
the OC is. If there's a single person who has ever listened to this who has not seen the OC, you do not know what you're missing.
It's true.
It is peak 2005 TV.
This is a horror / OC episode.
Yeah.
I mean, podcast.
Yeah. So I only have a couple facts about the movie because, I mean, there's obviously like millions. So I just kind of picked the interesting ones. So the director of Candyman actually the studio forced him to hold a meeting with the NAACP to review the script. And the director, I don't think we even said the director's name, it's Bernard
Rose, yeah.
Because the studio thought that there could be like some very problematic things with race in this, and the NAACP actually gave it kind of like the seal of approval and said that they were offended that the studio would make them have the meeting because they were saying, you know, you have these icons such as Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers, and so they didn't understand why couldn't a black man also occupy the space of a villain as like an iconic horror villain.
Yeah, and by a villain you mean like, because at this point in 1992, Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers and all them, they were no longer villains.
No,
they would get the movies. They were billed as like the main characters. Yeah, they were an anti-hero. They were the ones people went to see the movies for. Like, you don't even remember the fucking, heroines and shit at that time. It was like, oh yeah, Freddy and whoever else is in the movie.
So yeah, the NAACP thought that meeting was ridiculous and said, of course, there's nothing wrong with this movie. And then, like, a side note to that was that, what's her name? Virginia
Madsen.
Virginia Madsen also made the comment that she was pretty sure that Spike Lee would not like this movie when she was doing her press run. So I thought that was an interesting comment. So another thing was that originally they wanted to cast Eddie Murphy as Candyman.
Can you imagine?
Because the original idea was that Candyman was gonna kind of be like Freddy silly. He wasn't gonna.
Oh, cracking one-liners, yeah.
Yeah.
Except then Tony Todd walked in and was like, well, I'm going to vibrate your soul.
Basically what happened was the studio got a hold of Eddie Murphy, and they realized that $6 million budget was not getting them Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, that $6 million budget was getting them Eddie Murphy coming in and like farting for 10 minutes and then leaving.
Exactly. If Virginia Madsen couldn't play Helen, the next go-to was actually Sandra Bullock, because she was then unknown.
Also terrible. Eddie Murphy and Sandra Bullock in Candyman. Like, what?
I can't. Like, my skin is trying to crawl off my body right now. How terrible that would have been. And I love Eddie Murphy and I love Sandra Bullock, but two of them in this movie would have been awful. Capital A, awful.
So my last three facts I have, the scene where Tony Todd had the bees in his mouth, they created like this plastic dam for his mouth, so he actually did have those in his mouth.
Cool.
And one of the bees got behind it and actually crawled into his cheek.
Oh my god. And it drank his tears. It drank his tears. Like those bees from this year.
The special effects guy said how impressive it was because he had to also deliver lines, and he delivered a line with the bee still in his mouth, and they said he like nailed it.
Legendary.
And a side note to that was that he actually only got stung 23 times making all three movies. All the bees.
Yes, and let's face it, when we say he got stung 23 times making three movies, he got stung twice in the first movie, and I'm not gonna lie, I've seen all of them. Now, have I seen either 2 or 3 in the last 20 years of my life? No. But I do remember the budget going horrifically down with every sequel. Like, sequel number 2, okay, it was fine, it was okay, it was kind of cool. It had Kelly Rowan from the OC and flashback to 2 episodes ago, Veronica Cartwright, who was also in Alien.
Okay.
Which was cool. And then you fast forward to number 3, which had one of the random bitches from Baywatch who nobody remembers, and the budget was probably like $500,000. So the fact that he got stung 23 times makes me think it was like 3 times on the first movie, 7 times on the second one, and like 15 on the third one. And I know that's not math that adds up, but that's why.
So my last two
That's why I sell books and I don't do math.
My last 2 things were, as we stated in the beginning, Cabrini Green is a real place. So the producers had to pay off the gangs to let them shoot there. And we talked about briefly that when they first walk into Cabrini Green, those are all actual gang members. That was the agreement that they were allowed to be in the movie. They had 0 incidents, except on the last day of shooting, the gang had a sniper on a building, and he shot a bullet in their van, their production van. But it didn't hurt anyone. They didn't even know it was there till later.
They had a sniper on there?
Like, they had a guy on the roof.
Like, the gang?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
The gangs had a sniper rifle? Those things are fucking expensive.
Really high-tech.
Yeah, that's, like, insane. That's like some Oranishi...
trained.
Yeah.
Well, it
like,
probably was just like a normal gun.
You need to be able to hold your breath for, like, 2 solid minutes to snipe. Seriously.
And then the last thing, which I thought was super funny, was, so they hired an actual blacksmith in England to make the hook. They thought it'd be cool to get a real blacksmith to make it. So they asked the guy if he could make it. He said, yeah, sure, no problem. The special effects guy that did this movie also did Nightbreed and all of Clive Barker's stuff.
Yes.
Like Bob Keane and everyone else involved in his team. So basically they went to pick up the hook, and the guy that made it asked what it was for. They were very hesitant to tell him, because they said normally what happens is we say, oh, it's for Clive Barker, and then, like, they want to meet him, or, like, whatever, and they were like, they didn't want a fan-out situation. So, but reluctantly they said, oh, it's for this new horror movie that we're making that's based off of a Clive Barker book. The blacksmith then took the hook and put it in a drawer and locked it, and said that him and his son were devout Christians and refused to make things that were going to be involved in such filth as a horror movie. So they ended up having to make the hook by themselves, because the blacksmith didn't want it in the movie.
The blacksmith didn't want to do his job, is what that says to me.
What can you do, I guess?
I mean, you know what you could do? Not take the job. If you have a moral quandary, don't take the fucking job.
This is true.
I'm just saying.
That's pretty much all I have. So next, let's talk about the fan poll pick. When you guys are hearing this episode, there'll still be about 3 days left. So this is for May. And these are both... Well, I shouldn't say they're both Mike's picks. It's Mike's pick and Evil Mike's pick.
Which is to say, both Mike's picks, because there's nothing but Evil Mike.
And the theme for this fan poll pick is sequels that don't really have anything much to do with the first one.
Also known as, quote, mostly unnecessary part 2s.
Mostly unnecessary part 2s. And the choices are Hello Mary Lou, Prom Night 2, and Witchboard 2, The Devil's Doorway. Neither I have seen, and I am very interested.
I cannot wait to see what people choose. I really can't. And I cannot wait to hear what you guys have to say about whatever it is that they choose.
And next, we will announce the actual next episode, which is Mike's first pick in the reign of Mike.
Mike's taking over this month.
He's taking over this month.
Well, I will be causing a commotion amongst the horror community when I say we are going to be watching the absolute stone cold classic April Fool's Day. Starring Deborah Foreman and a bunch of people that you've never heard of before, including Deborah Foreman.
I've never seen this, so I'm very excited.
You are going to love it.
And I guess we'll get to the normal plugs. So, as always, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at It Slays Podcast. If you want to join us as a horror hound, come on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast. There's lots of cool things you can get, like shout-outs and Google Hangouts, what we gotta do at some point.
Oh, yes.
And thank you cards and all that kind of good stuff. And also, I wanted to plug, I want to thank everyone that's given us a star rating on iTunes. If you haven't done that yet, please do, because that helps us continue to get seen more by people that are searching for horror podcasts. And we'd love also, if anyone wants to write a text review as well, we'd love to hear people's opinions on the show.
Even if you're saying, shut up, you stupid fucks, we will take it.
We'll take it.
We love, like, feedback and constructive criticism.
As long as with that feedback and constructive criticism, if you can give us a 5-star, that would be great.
Yes, and as long as the constructive criticism is, don't drink wine before you record a podcast.
But other than that, I think that is everything for this episode. We will see you when we are back with April Fool's Day, only a month too late. I am Rowan.
Bye, it's Xelia.
This is Mike. Thanks for everything.
See you, bye.